Special friend, Terri Stovall, and she's going to tell you everything about what she does and her role in just a few moments. But we just want to thank you for coming to the expo, listening to the expo, and if you are out and about this way and you catch me on live on our YouTube or Facebook, we want you to come and be a part of the SBC Expo in New Orleans at the Convention Center. If you're in the hallway or you get a notification that we're doing a live, we are. And we want you to come and be a part of that. And we're just doing short little podcasts and streaming this. And I've got some super friends that are here doing their exhibits and telling you all about what they have to offer you as a woman of God. So today, in this short time, I have my friend, as I've already told you, Terri Stovall. So Terri, tell us what you do and where you serve and what you do and all of that role, okay? And it's a lot, but
well, I serve at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary and Texas Baptist College in Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
I've been there almost 21 years now, and a focus of my ministry is women's ministry. I serve as Dean of Women, Professor of Educational Ministries with a focus in women's ministry. I added a couple of other things along the way.
Yes,
but my focus
because that's what we do.
That's what we do. But really my focus is training women to be able to fulfill the call God has on their life.
And that is a huge calling on your own life, right?
It is.
It's more than full-time. That's true of all of us in ministry. We know that, right?
There's no part-time ministry.
No, there's not. And even full-time is not just full-time.
40 hours a week is not a thing.
That doesn't happen, especially if you're in session in a semester of school, right?
Yes,
training women. And you're partnering with them for a lifetime, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because after you make those initial friends, especially for those who finish the program and are out serving the Lord in their local church, you're connected to them all the time, right?
Yeah, definitely. And at convention, my favorite thing is seeing my former students from like decades ago.
I know.
It's so fun.
And that's kind of a scary thing.
It is kind of a scary thing, but I get to hear what God's doing in their lives.
Absolutely.
And where they're serving and how I can pray for them.
So you've just shared the primary focus of your ministry there and of what y'all do at Southwestern, but is there a mission statement that you could share with us?
There is. So we really are about training men and women who are called for ministry to help the churches and other ministries have people that are trained for that. We have 4 focuses. We want women specifically to be able to teach, lead, disciple, and biblically counsel others. And so that's kind of the 4 pillars that I focus on: teaching, leading, discipling, and counseling.
That's awesome. I love all of those areas. So vital, because in our culture, your ministry, you really have shared with us, just by sharing those points, what your ministry is all about in training those women to get out into the culture that they're living in the context that they're living in, to be able to not only survive, but thrive in their ministry, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So how is the woman that you're training prepared to serve in this culture?
Okay, this is a crazy culture. I think every culture has its own things.
Yeah.
But we want them to be confident to engage the culture.
Yes.
And have the tools in their toolbox so that they can teach women and others what God's word says.
Yes.
And have those be equipped to go to the depths of God, to be able to lead others well, so that they're training others to lead behind them, to be able to disciple women in whatever context and culture they're in, to be able to grow women. And even, women have walked through hard things, and a woman's going to come to them and say, this is what I'm struggling with. To truly take them to God's word and say, but God's got an answer. There's so many stories of women in the Bible. I've never had a woman come to me and says, but God doesn't understand this. Like, let me take you to this story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to be able to show women what God has done for women and can do in women today.
Yeah. And you were just sharing that, and this popped into my head, basically because I just did a research paper on this, and it actually, the stat is like you said, every woman has gone through something. 1 in 4 women today in the U.S. have been sexually abused, which is a horrible stat.
Yes.
I mean, seriously horrible, which means that a lot of our women who are coming for training have experienced that kind of have that kind of story, and there's a level of brokenness in them that is so important for you, especially in this gender-driven culture that we're living. So how are you helping them be prepared? Like, is there an opportunity for those women who are coming to your training to really find healing and fulfillment and or really a restoration, not fulfillment, restoration in this whole process. So before they go out and sin.
So we've seen her even at Southwestern. God calls women to ministry out of their pain sometimes.
Yes.
And when we're doing our training, it's almost like God said, okay, now we're going to really deal with this to get you ready to go to the next level.
Yes.
And so I spend a lot of time connecting women with resources, counselors, praying with them. I've got a team of women that work in our women's center just to encourage them, because we want women to leave our program not only theologically trained and practically trained, but spiritually healthy.
Right.
So that they have kind of not necessarily dealt with their stuff, but it seems like God just says, okay, girls, now it's time for us to get you ready. And part of that getting you ready is to deal with some things you may not have dealt with.
Absolutely. And as they get ready, well, emotionally and spiritually, psychologically, all of those things, then they will minister out of an overflow of their heart of what God has done in their own heart. And it's powerful, right?
It is powerful. Sometimes it's the last point of healing whenever they get to help somebody else who may have been walking through something similar to them, and they see how God is using their pain to minister to somebody else. It kind of brings to light where God, that verse that what was meant for evil, God can use for good.
Absolutely.
They're like, okay, I would not have wishes on anybody, but God's using this to draw others to Him.
Right. And she can relate with not only empathy, but true understanding.
True understanding, because they've walked the road.
They've walked that road. So as we close out today, I have a personal question for every one of my exhibitors that are going to be with me today. And this is it. How has the gospel in serving and in ministry impacted you?
Wow, I read that question and have reflected long. I've been serving intentionally in ministry for 40 years. Probably 38 of those have been in vocational ministry.
Right.
There's been the highest highs and the lowest lows, but it has been a continuing sanctification in my own life of God, not only making this my calling and my job, but it's in my DNA now.
Yeah.
And there was a time, probably about 5 years ago, God and I kind of hit a point.
Yeah. I think I talked with you during that time.
Like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And so the Lord and I really season of wrestling together, where he really got me to the point of saying, okay, are you serving man or are you serving me? Man meaning mankind. Are you focused on pleasing man or are you pleasing me?
Yes.
And he really took me to the point of 1 Peter where it says, God, you're God's own possession. And you see this memorabilia that are sold, baseballs or paintings. They're not sold because they're a baseball or a painting. They're sold because of who owned them.
Yes.
Or who used them in a sort of special way. It's like the ball that hit the home run for the World Series. So my identity is grounded in the fact that God possesses me fully and wholly.
He owns you, right?
He owns me. And it goes on for the purpose of declaring His excellencies of how He took me out of darkness into light. And so I have had to come to the point now, out of some very hard seasons, to say, okay, the higher you go in ministry, more successful you're in ministry as a woman, the less men are there. Actually, less people are there.
Yes, this is true.
And the aloneness is deafening. But
well, yes.
So I have to keep my eye on Him.
Absolutely.
And to continue to declare the excellencies of how He's taken me out of darkness into light, and what I want that for every person. And if it's only me shouting it from the mountains and God, it's me and God, it's enough.
Absolutely.
It's enough. And so
He knows where you are, right?
He knows where I am. If I serve in obscurity and nobody else knows, it's still enough because of what He has done in my life and continues to do. And so ministry is not for the faint of heart.
It is not.
And if that is not what God has called you to do full time,
well,
do ministry through other avenues.
The question that I have is, what does it cost you? And the reality is, it costs you everything.
It costs you everything.
Because Galatians 2:20 talks about that, being crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but the life I live in the flesh, I live by faith, and the one who loved me and delivered Himself up for me. And the reality is that if you're going to serve in ministry, and you've wrestled this out, that there is going to be loneliness.
There is.
And I think that women don't understand that all the time, but the number one issue for number one report from all things, what's the number one issue you deal with as ministry wives has been, we are lonely. It's lonely.
It is lonely.
And yet God gives us special friends.
He does. He does.
And you and I have been those special
We
friends.
have.
I think we've been 18 to 20 years friends
Yes.
since we've been doing this.
Since we've been doing this.
And so today, I just want to thank you for coming on and always being a faithful friend to me and encourager to me.
Thank you for your friendship and just for your faithfulness and service and how you minister to those who are walking in lonely places. I like to distinguish the difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yes.
There's a lot of times you're alone. It doesn't have to always go to loneliness.
Yes,
and so
I agree.
I just want to encourage women to keep their eyes on him. It may be hard, but good days are coming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Diane.
God bless. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you in a few moments with another podcast streaming from Contagious Joy and the Southern Baptist Women's Expo. God bless.